Hey everybody, Brittany Joyner here. I am doing a talk about how community leaders can use Trello. And I'm actually giving this talk tomorrow. It's a workshop that I'm leading at the Team 24 Community Leaders Day. And I'm doing it now because one, I have a feeling a lot of people are going to ask, is this recorded? And I don't know that it's going to be when I actually give it. So I wanted to get it documented ahead of time so I could send out to folks. And two, I wanted to give a good run through and kind of make sure I have my flow done before I actually give this tomorrow live and in person. So the in-person version is probably going to be a bit more engaging. Right now, I don't have anybody to talk back with me, but hopefully there will be some conversation and dialogue tomorrow. And if you're watching this and you're like, I'm not a community leader, is this interesting? I bet you're still going to pick up something here that is useful about how you may want to use Trello and different things that you can do with it. So I'm going to give some very specific examples, but you can also think about them outside of just a community leader because you're probably doing similar type of things and maybe just not calling it community. So let's jump in here. We'll see how well I stick to my timeline here. But basically, I want to start out with my first use case that I want to mention, which is saving community answers to a saving community questions that you answer to a Trello board. And so the context for this is that when we are in the Atlassian community, which is basically, if you're not aware, it's a big online forum. When you're here, you can find questions to answer, and you might answer somebody's question, add a comment on here, and we actually get points for having our answers accepted. And aside from anything for those points, it's actually really helpful to be able to see who is answering questions effectively and seeing if a question that has popped up has a solution to it. So sometimes it's a little bit annoying because we want to follow up and make sure our answers get accepted, and if they're not, then help a user figure out what they need. And so I have a couple different ways I like to do that. Trello can, of course, help with this because it gives you a way to track those sort of questions you've answered, so you can follow up with and say, hey, I'd actually, did this answer your question? Do you still need help? If it did, do you mind accepting it? Because it'll indicate to other people what you need to do there. So what I recommend doing is you could have a board like this. You can go ahead and copy this board. I've made it public. I'm going to include a link to it in the video description, and I'll be sharing it in the workshop. But a couple things you want to do. You want to have a board like this, and you can kind of imagine a linear workflow about when you answer a question. You add it in here to this incoming list, and I'll show you a shortcut for that in a second. And then we'll add some automation that will set the due date to a couple days from then, because, people aren't going to see it right away. You might want to give them a few days to actually check in and see if that was the right answer. And so we want to set the due date for, a couple days from now. And so we'll set up that rule. When a card is due, we want it to automatically move into this time to follow up list. And once it moves over there, this gives us an easy way to, one, come into this board and see, oh, here's what I need to pay attention to. And with Trello's new collapsed list features, we can honestly close all of these so that when you come in here, there's just one place to look and one place to see what all you need to do. So I'm going to open these back up, but that's one way that you could do it. And it'll just be super clear. Then you can go in there. You'll already have the link to the thing you've answered. You can click that and then go right back to the question and say, hey, did this help? Do you still need help with something? Would you mind accepting this, etc.? So that is how that would work. Once you've, responded and checked in on that, you can drag the card over here, and then you can even keep track of when it was accepted and move it back over here. So I don't get really pushy about it. I only ask once. If someone's not going to accept it, they're not going to accept it. And I'm not going to chase that down. But you could also have a list over here for in our, accept this answer sort of thing. You could build some automation that maybe if its card sits in here for too long, it posts a message to Slack and says, hey, can you accept this answer? So if this workflow looks interesting to you and you want to automate it, let me show you a couple things you can do here. So one, I recommend adding this send to Trello. Let me open a new tab here. This send to Trello link. Let me go back over here. So if you go to this place, bookmark this link, go here. Drag this link right here to your bookmarks, literally just like drag it up there like that. You can see I've already done that. And then whenever you visit a page you want to send to Trello, you just click that and you'll be able to do it. So let's say I'm here on this, let's just say I'm here in the community and I want to save this page. Click send to Trello. It's going to bring up this pop-up. It's going to automatically grab the description of the page, some info about it, and you can change the description. You can specify where to send it. It'll automatically default to the last place, which if you're always using this for that, it's pretty much one click. Otherwise, you can choose a different list. You can choose a different board and say exactly where you want to send it. Bada boom, bada bing. So that's super easy way to do that. Next, once you've got them into the board, you want to set up the following rules, okay? So I've got screenshots of these on this board, so you don't have to write this down and remember all of this, but I am going to show you how I would set those up. So first of all, you're going to go to Trello Automation. You're going to click this lightning bolt, and you are going to go to Rules, and this is the first one we want to do, so let's do Enabled. All right, so I want you to see what I've got here, and I'm going to show you how to create it. When a card is added to the board, set the due date in 3 days. This is going to make it so we get reminders and can do stuff. So let's hit Create Automation, Add Trigger, and very first one here, when a card is added to the board. If it looks a little different, you might have the advanced toggled on or off. Shouldn't really matter either way since we don't need the filters here, but you can click that. And then you're going to go to this date section, and you're going to say Set Due Date. And you can click now and you can change the increment. So let's say you're like, I actually want to do it in 1 day. Well, you can make it 1 day. Maybe you want it to be 1 working days. If you respond on Friday, you want it to be the next working day. So then you could say 1 working day. Like I said, 3 is not a bad one, so I just chose that. And once you set that, click the click the plus, and you can add it up there. You can add other actions here too, right? You could add yourself to the card. I think that's in members, join the card. That's adding yourself to it. You can assign a specific person, you can add a comment, you can do all sorts of stuff to it. So that's the one rule we need. I've already got it set up, so I'm not going to click save, but make sure you remember to click save. Next, what we want to do is we want an automation that is going to move that card to our time to follow up list. So you can see I've already got this set up. And the way I've done that is due date. Let me start from the beginning, create automation. And you're going to say the moment a card is due. You could say the day before, you could say 2 days after, whatever you want to do with that. But I'm just going to choose the basic one, the moment a card is due. And then you're going to go to the move section, and you're going to say move it to the top of list, whichever one you want, which is time to follow up. And again, I like to do this just because it gives me one list to look at where I can pay attention to, oh, here's what I need to do. Here's how I want to handle that. So move to top of list, click the plus button, add that, and just hit save, and you're done. Boom. And then one last thing I want to do, this is kind of a nice to have because you can definitely easily drag cards around a board. So you don't always need to, but I like making buttons to do things. So you can create a card button, you can call it accepted, you can choose an icon, blah, 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 do whatever. And for the action, this is where we just want to move the card to the top of the list, answer accepted. And that way, when somebody does, let's say, someone has accepted this answer, rather than having to click here and move it or manually drag it around, I can just go in here and say accepted, and boom, it's going to automatically move that card over to answer accepted. So those are kind of some core principles here and some ways that we might move around and organize the different cards here. Use this board to keep track of questions that I've answered. It's also a good way to kind of compare if you're keeping track of points and you're like, wait a minute, I'm not, getting points for all these things, or I feel like I've answered a lot more, or, whatever. I don't know if many of us are really tracking all of that sort of stuff, or how much we care about that, but it is a good way to kind of keep track of what you've answered. And if you're someone like me, you may want to actually use this content to shape your other stuff as well, right? Like shape your own personal brand. So for instance, instead of just answering a question on the community and forgetting about it, what if all of the ones you answered, you also tweeted about or posted on social media or LinkedIn and said, hey, do you have this question as well? I answered this, here's what you think. And this just gives you an endless content bank, whether it's incoming, whether it's questions you've answered but haven't been accepted or not, you can always follow up with them and do that there. So just wanted to share that. That is one big use case. And this is the part in the workshop where I'll ask folks if they have any questions. And it looks like that part probably took closer to 10 minutes. So I'm going to actually update my schedule here. Notice I'm using Confluence as well as Trello. So get excited about that. All right. So next up, the next use case I want to talk about is planning events and resources / meeting notes. So this is kind of a standard sort of Trello use case. To be honest, I don't think too many people are going to be surprised by this, but I wanted to show it and help people maybe see some different ways they may organize their board. So a lot of us in the community are planning events. We're planning whether it's, workshops about how to do this or that in Trello or whatever our tool is. Sometimes they're partner events. There's usually some stuff we need to coordinate with venues, partners, Atlassian, ordering swag, things like that. But there's also, generally a community of people that we're inviting to these events. For instance, if you're based in, Columbus, for example, you're going to have your regular members up there. So you can organize your board 100 different ways, right? This is where Trello is like Legos. You could do whatever you want. But a couple ways that I see folks maybe doing this is having a list for each event. And so maybe you've got something coming up in March. You have one card that shows the date, the location, the topic, who your sponsors are. Then you have a card called resources where you're adding, any slides or recordings or content from it. And then you just have a section of cards on here called to do. So your first question might be, wait a minute, I didn't know we could make sections in Trello. How did you do that? If you go to a card, call it whenever you want, go to cover, and you're going to have options to style your card like this. So you can remove a cover and you see this just looks like any other card. But if I click it and if I go to cover, pick a color, and this version makes it where the color just shows up above it, whereas this option makes it cover the whole thing like that. Kind of a style preference, whichever you prefer, but it's a great way to kind of group off cards. You can also do a bunch of dashes and have headers like this, so that can be a nice way to kind of separate content. And then you can have cards below for all the different things you need to do. So then you can archive them, or you can make another section called done, however you want to do that. Totally up to you. You could also make automation here that says, when something is done, move it to the bottom of the list. That way it keeps track of the done cards and just moves them below that heading. Totally up to you. Some fun stuff you can do with this for sure. But you can basically make this like a template. So once you've got all of your tasks and everything that happens for every event, when you want to make a new event, you just take this, go copy list. You can call it next event or whatever. And it's going to duplicate the list and you just change the details with whatever you want. So some of the beauty of this is, let's say this card has your date or whatever. You could use Trello's views to view it on a calendar. And you can see here's all of the, I don't actually have any dates on this yet, but you could see your community's events for the year. You could also use this to share content with this afterwards. So let's say, for instance, this board is private with maybe you and your co-leaders. You don't want everybody to see all your planning stuff, but you do want a way to share maybe promo about an event. And so like you have a card called event promo. And then maybe you also have, these resources afterwards that you want to share. Well, you can make some cards public. And the way you can do that is with a power-up called external share power-up. So let me actually show you how to add it. Click add power-ups. Go to external share, add. And this is part of the Tiny Power-Ups Club. They've got a lot of cool power-ups that you can use. Yeah, I mean, this is just some of them here. And you pay like $5 a month per user. And it's not like per Trello user. It's basically per Tiny Power-Ups user, I believe. And so it's super affordable for a lot of different cool power-ups, one of which that I'm about to show you is this external share one. So the way it works, I'm going to make a label called public. And I can make it a hidden label with no color. And I can just call this public. And when it has no color, that means it's not going to show up on the front of it, but it will show up on the inside of it. So let's add this to a couple others that I want to do. Maybe this one, public. And then what I can do is I can go to this external share power up. And what it's going to let me do is even though I share public cards, even though I want to keep most of my board private, what I can do is specify that any card with the label public, see right there, those will appear on this external share link. And so I can allow commenting. So let's say I want my members to be able to comment on it or anybody who sees it to be able to, they can do that. But once I do that, I'm just going to hit create. It's going to create that. And I've got a link here. And now notice I can share that link and people can view just those cards that I have shared. It's going to have all the details if I've added any attachments or anything in here. It's going to show all that there. This isn't the greatest example, I guess, because I don't have anything in there. Let me show you what it looks like if I do have something in there. Let's see. Let's add a good like cover image maybe. Yeah, let's add crumble in here. Insert. All right. And so now let's go back over here. You can see it's updating live too. So that's the thing. I don't have to update this link. Anytime I add stuff, it's going to show up in here. And it's a great way for you to operate in one board where you can keep track of stuff and keep stuff private between you and your leaders, but also be able to share that with your community members as well, and no need to create multiple boards or anything like that. So I hope that's helpful to you all, and I thought that could be a good use case. Let's see if there's anything else I want to share here. Yeah, and this is a part where, I'm going to ask, because I'm sure people have their own variations of how they have this set up, and I'm going to ask people if they're having any questions with that and what, maybe we can solve them. So if you're watching this recording, if you have questions and you're like, hey, I use my board in a similar way, but this doesn't work, comment on this video and let me know, and I'm going to be happy to try to help you solve that. Okay, moving on to the next one. So creating a CRM board with your members and engaging with them. So I haven't actually made a demo for this one yet because this board is going to be pretty simple to however you want to run it. But let's just go ahead, let's do it now. We'll do it for this recording and then I'll have one for tomorrow. So basically when you're running, an ACE, you've got Atlassian Community Events, you have typically some sort of domain. So it could be, like a city, like Columbus or something. I'm very involved obviously with Trello. And so, I could think of like my community too as like people who subscribe to my newsletter, my premium subscribers, things like that. And so what you could do is use Trello as a CRM, which is a fancy word for managing contacts in Trello. And you might be like, wait a minute, that sounds super weird. Why on earth would I ever need to do that? I do not work in sales. I'm a community leader. And I think that sometimes we can all just use a better way of keeping track of people and things and stuff that is going on and making sure that there's, nothing slipping through the cracks and nobody's forgotten. Because at the end of the day, we are running a community here. And we're not maybe trying to use a CRM in the sense of upselling people, but we do want people to feel engaged and to keep track of people. And maybe it's a good idea to keep up with, have you had some members who haven't come to your last couple events, or have you had some members who have come to every single event and maybe you want to, reward them or something or thank them. So that's where I could see it being helpful to have something like this. And using Trello could be a good way to keep track of your members, maybe important details about them, so you can help have that personal connection with them. And because our brains are not perfect, we're not going to remember everything. Even as I'm here at team this week, I want to remember everybody I've ever met and all of the fun facts that we have shared with each other across Zoom. But halfway through the week, I can't even remember my own name sometimes. So that's where Trello can come in to help really share that. And so basically, this is kind of the world's your oyster. You can make it as simple as complicated as you want. But let's just say you've got, different members, and each card equals a member in your community. And you can create your own custom fields of things like their email address or their, whatever you may want to do, maybe like the product that they like. You could have a drop down of products they care about. Spoiler alert, mine would be Trello. I mean, whatever you want to do here. You could make it have different fields like email or things like that. You could also, if you want this to look a little bit different, because admittedly Trello's basic custom fields are kind of bare bony, you could use a power up called Amazing Fields, and that's going to let you create even more custom fields. And so there's lots of different things that you can do to like actually style those fields to look really cool. So imagine having a spreadsheet of your member roster, but having columns of these fields of all these different things you want to keep track of, maybe the number of events that they've attended, and different things like that. You could do that. If you really want to take it to the next level, you could use something like Crumble, which is actually a CRM in Trello. And I'll show you a little bit more about Crumble because it's a handy power up. It might be a bit overkill for a lot of cases here, but what it basically is going to let you do is it's going to give you those custom fields for managing contacts like out of the box. I'm going to go ahead and add this board in here, and you'll see it's going to give you some reporting. So if you want to see maybe how many people have done certain things, refresh the page, how many people have done certain things. So again, this makes more sense for like sales pipelines and things like that. But even a community leader could, care about things like how many events somebody's attended, and maybe keeping track of like if you're trying like a deal could potentially be like your next event, and you're trying to contact people to see if they're coming to an event and what they're doing with that. Another great way to use this is because there are toppings where you can sync this with other tools. And so, for instance, if you have a Google form, I know we're all probably using like Bevy and stuff for people to sign up for events, but if you have a Google form or anything for people to sign up for, your newsletter or different things like that, you can connect that here so that once someone fills out that form, they're going to be added in here to your board. And it's just a great way to manage those sort of like contact details with also the project management aspect of things like, maybe for every contact that you have, you want to send a welcome email when they sign up. Maybe you want to, then a month later check in, offer coffee, virtual coffee or real coffee, or something like that. You might have like a bunch of different things that you're going to do. Well, you can save this standard checklist and then use this anytime someone comes in. You can also create automation so that when a new card is added, just like in our other board, we said when a new card is added, add a due date. Well, you could say actually add this checklist. And so then, once a week you can come in here and see, okay, Brittany, I haven't talked to her in a while. Let me send her an email, or etc. You get the idea. So I'm going to stop there because I am running short on time, but basically there's lots of alternatives for doing that. I've also, in the last couple minutes, got a few quick hit ideas. And so this is like, I don't have whole boards built out for all of these things, but I do want to share a couple examples. So one, a lot of us community leaders are vendors, or let's just say have a lot of things to talk about. I recommend you do something called creating a speaker writer. And I actually got this idea from Cassidy Williams. She's a developer, and she does this in GitHub, but I, of course, had the idea to do it in Trello. And so this is basically details about, a speaker writer. And so it just lets you know that, hey, I'm open to speaking. Here's things I look for. Here's things you may need to know about me if you need headshots, if you need to know like where I'm from. Saves me from having to type all of this up. You can save past speaking examples here. You could also say like things I like to talk about. Trello, automation, productivity, you can do whatever you want here. So world's really your oyster. I will include a link to this, and feel free to, like I said, it's public, so you can make a copy of this board and make it your own and do what you would like here. So I recommend that. Another thing, quick hit idea, you can create automation in Trello so that every day it makes a card. So let's say if you're doing other sort of task management things somewhere, maybe you want to create a rule, and you would go to the due date, scheduled ones, and you just say create automation, and you would say every day, you could say every working weekday or whatever you want to do there, and you could say create a new card with check community, and you can update the description, or to include a link to community.trello, community.atlassian, blah, 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 whatever you've got there. You could add that in there, and then it's going to make that card every day, so it's like a recurring reminder for you. It's another idea. You can also manage your Atlassian community emails with Sendboard. So, for instance, if you have an Atlassian community address, or if you're someone like me who gets a lot of questions about Trello in your normal email, it might be nice to deal with all that in a Trello board, since it's kind of like a bunch of tasks anyways. And so what you can do is use Sendboard, which is another power up that basically lets you access your email inside of Trello. And so you've got like an inbox list here, which is where new emails come in. And then you can, you can go through these basically and interact with them just like you were in Gmail, but you don't have to actually go to Gmail, and you can reply to emails and do whatever you want here. You can have like saved templates and things like that. So if you get asked the same sort of questions recently, however you want to deal with that, it's a great way to go about it. And one other thing I wanted to share, since I'm starting to be a Confluence girly, is that you can store, if you have stuff in Confluence, you can easily put that in Trello. So for instance, let's go back over here. Let's say I have this page. Well, I can attach it via the attachments, and that's one way to do it, but I can also embed it in here. And so if you notice, if I hover over it like this, I can do a whole little card here where I can see what else. It basically embeds that exact page here into my description. And so now people can access my Confluence content without having to actually even leave the page here. So I'm going to call it here. Like I said, I if you have any questions, comment on this video and ask, but this is just a few like rapid fire ideas of how community leaders can use Trello. I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions or you want to try it out for yourself, yeah, reach out to me and let's chat. Thanks for watching.